Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. Tonight's game was against the Houston Rockets. It was on Amazon Prime. It was rivalry week. And let me just say, this game did not disappoint. I do want to say something before we get into this post-game podcast and go over our quarter notes, go over the box score, and open up the show to comments and questions. Amazon Prime does a such good job of just presentation from the pregame show, from the graphics, from announcing. Like, really love the work that Amazon Prime does on these games. I believe the Pistons have a couple more Prime games, which absolutely love it. I found myself actually tuning into the Bucks Nuggets game, and I was like, oh shit, I have to do a post game show. I was just so glued into it watching another basketball game. But let's get into this post game show. So Pistons were playing the Rockets, like I mentioned. Houston started off with a lot of energy, and I didn't really think that they would have that much energy considering they just played the Philadelphia 76ers the night before. It was an overtime game in which they lost, but they came out with a lot of energy. And this game really had like a playoff vibe to it. Just the way that Houston was defending, the way that the crowd was into it. That was probably one of the most packed games I've seen this season. And it's to be expected. It really is. You're playing one of the better teams in the NBA. Believe Houston is like the sixth best team considered by record, 26 win team, and definitely felt like a playoff atmosphere game. Pistons did struggle really early in this first quarter. They started to put a little bit more better possessions, in my opinion, towards the midway through the first, and it was because of the bench unit. Cade was kind of out there with the bench unit. I think JB was just trying a couple different lineup combinations with uh, the Pistons tonight because it really felt like the starters just struggled all night. He was kind of having Cade out there with like Ron and Ivy. He was just trying to find something. Pistons had to settle being down 8 after 12 minutes of play. So it was 28-20. Going into the second quarter, the turnovers in transition, I really felt like just hurt us. They weren't guarding Kevin Durant from three, which I mean, you got to guard Kevin Durant. I mean, he just is a murder on the Pistons. I believe the Pistons are the one team where he has the highest point per game throughout his career. I think he's averaging like close to, I think the broadcast said like 40, which is crazy. I'm gonna have to look that up after the game is over on Basketball Reference just to see and double check that because it could have been a miscue by them, but you never know. Pistons did have their hustle unit out there with Ron Holland, Danish Jenkins, Javante Green, and Isaiah Stewart. And they made stops and they ran the floor hard and they got the Pistons back into this game. I really felt like the bench unit and that hustle unit uh, should have probably finished this game. And this was just in the second quarter, my thoughts on it. Like, I really liked what I saw from them. Asar Thompson, after he got fouled, scored 8 straight points. He was really aggressive, and, after being down as much as 8 points in the first quarter, you're able to go into halftime tied up at 52, and I was like, "Okay, bench unit got us back in, and maybe we can, come out of halftime, uh, you know, just more focused, take better care of the basketball." But unfortunately, Asar Thompson picked up 2 fouls. He already had 3, so he had 5 fouls in the third quarter, so he didn't really get to see too much of him, and that's a real shame because we know how impactful he is as a defender and backdoor cuts, lob threats, all that stuff. Kevin Durant was still getting to his spot, still hitting his shots. Houston really blitzed Cade, and that's the first time I've really seen a team blitz Cade. I mentioned at the top of the podcast, it had a playoff atmosphere. I think you're going to see that a lot. I think watching this game, we have a lot of data and a lot of details in terms of like what the playoffs could possibly look like right now as this roster is currently constructed. But they did a really good job of blitzing Cade, getting the ball out of his hands. And I really felt like the third quarter won Houston the game. There was just nothing the Pistons could do. Houston was just getting into the paint. They were crashing the glass. Reed Shepard was hitting his shots. Kevin Durant was hitting his shots. And the defense just wasn't really as locked in as they probably could have been. And Houston was able to get out to a 14-point lead. So after 3 quarters, it was 86-72. To start the fourth, you had Sengun and Stu kind of get into it. There was a little foul there, but I'm just going to say, for as big as Alperen Sengun is, he flops a lot for a center. I'll just say that, as talented as he is, he's kind of a little flopper. I'll just say that. There's a lot of flagrant and technical fouls in this fourth quarter. Jayshawn Tate got a flagrant penalty, 1 foul against Ron Holland, as Ron kind of went to make a play on the ball and he was in the air, so they kind of call a foul on Matt. It was a 4-point swing. Then back-to-back possessions where Isaiah Stewart gets buckets and he gets fouled, and Pistons worth them 4. So you're kind of thinking, this bench unit, this hustle unit got them back into the game again. And then there was a technical foul with Jabari Smith and Ron Holland, and it's only like a 6-point game. So I'm thinking, you have the second unit in here. Maybe you try to put these starters in there. Maybe the starters can kind of close this game out, but the starters just did not have it tonight. Houston was able to take advantage of that, and they were able to snap the Pistons 4-game winning streak. 111-104 was the final score. I do see a lot of people leaving comments in the live chat right now, and I will get to those after we kind of go over the box score. But I appreciate all you guys watching, even after a Detroit Pistons loss in this one. But let's get into the box score, and this will kind of tell you a bit, maybe paint a picture, kind of looking at the starters and then looking at the bench unit. So Tobias Harris in a start only scored 4 points. He was 1 out of 6 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3, 2 out of 3 from the free throw line, had 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 turnover, and 2 steals. He was a -16 in this one. Tobias Harris was matched up a lot with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant took the challenge of defending him. I was really surprised when I looked at the box score and Tobias only had 4 points. I was like, wow, only 4. That's kind of crazy. Duncan Robinson in 26 minutes had 9 points. He was 2 out of 8 from the field, 2 out of 8 from 3, 3 out of 5 from the free throw line, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. He was a -15 in the box score. Jalen Duren did his thing. He had 18 points, probably the most consistent starter in terms of the scoring. 7 out of 13 from the field, perfect from the free throw line, 4 for 4, 7 rebounds, 2 turnovers for Jalen Duren. He was a -15. Cade Cunningham in 38 minutes played had 12 points, 5 out of 13 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3, 2 out of 3 from the free throw line, 1 rebound, 8 assists, 6 turnovers by Cade, 2 steals, 1 block. He was a -10. And Sir Thompson in 24 minutes had 12 points, 5 out of 8 from the field, perfect from the free throw line where he's made both of his free throws, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, 2 steals. He was a -14. Obviously, only played 24 minutes because of the foul trouble tonight. Isaiah Stewart off the bench, 16 points, 7 out of 9 from the field, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, was a +4 in the plus-minus. Ron Holland had 13 points off the bench, 5 out of 7 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, 2 out of 3 from the free throw line, had 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 turnovers, 2 steals. He was a +2. Javonte Green had 17 minutes off the bench, had 2 points, 1 out of 3 from 3, had 3 rebounds, 1 assist. And he was a +12 in this one. Jaden Ivey had 14 minutes off the bench tonight, 8 points, 3 out of 7 from the field, 2 out of 5 from 3, 1 rebound, 2 assists. It was a +3. And Danish Jenkins in 19 minutes had 10 points, 4 out of 10 from the field, 2 out of 6 from 3, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 turnover, 1 steal, and he led everyone in plus-minus tonight with a +14. So that kind of paints the picture. As you guys can see, the starting unit really struggled to create any type of consistent offensive looks. Just kind of looking at the team stats, I mean, Pistons and Rockets shot similar percentages. They shot 48% to Houston's 49%. Neither team really shot the ball particularly well from 3. Houston made 9 threes out of 26 attempts. They shot 35%. Pistons made 7 3-pointers out of 32 attempts. So the Pistons shot 22% to Houston's 35%. Free throws were something where, the Pistons shot 71%. We know this is not a good free throw shooting team. Houston did out-rebound them. One thing I do want to say, which I'm surprised JB didn't do this, For as much as Clint Capella was crashing the glass, I was really surprised that he didn't try to initiate maybe a double big lineup with Duren and Stewart tonight, because you still have Paul Reed on your bench just in case one of those guys get into foul trouble. Would have thought playing double bigs against a physical team like Houston uh, would have been something that JB would have at least explored, but he didn't. I was kind of surprised by that. Assist Pistons had 22 to Houston's 21. 9 steals, 4 blocks, 17 turnovers. Both teams had 17 turnovers. Fast break points. Pistons only had 12. Houston did a really good job of limiting their fast break points. Points in the paint, Pistons had 58 to Houston's 50. And we had 2 technical fouls and 1 flagrant foul, but I really felt like it was the starters and that third quarter collapse, in my personal opinion, is why I felt that this team just didn't really have a um, good game. Kind of going into the game and mentioning the game. I mean, the Pistons were favored in this one, surprisingly. They were a -3 on FanDuel tonight, and FanDuel thought that the Pistons were going to win this game, and it was going to be a close game. I mean, last game was only a 4-point deciding factor where the Pistons beat Houston really early on in the season, but this was a very entertaining game. Like, don't get it twisted. I think that we definitely have a lot to talk about in the Q&A right now, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. But I think the one thing that I think this showed us is you're going to have to get more 3-point shooting. And I see Sharon Dalton actually commented that in terms of just the um, deadline as it does, approach. She said this game is a prime example of needing another shooter. And I 100% agree. I think that's something that we've said on these post game shows where, like, we understand that this team is first in the East. We understand that they have a lot of strengths in terms of being a paint presence, being able to just lock teams up defensively and hanging their head on the defensive end of the floor. And we love that, right? But I think adding an additional 3-point shooter alongside Duncan Robinson could go a long way. Now, I don't think you have to break the bank or break up the core to address the 3-point shooter. I really don't. I think there are uh, cost effective 3-point shooters in the trade market as we do get closer to February 5th. But I honestly think adding an additional 3-point shooter could help the spacing with this team. I just don't really know what type of 3-point shooter uh, Trajan would like to target. I don't know if he would like more of just a standstill 3-point shooter. I don't know if he's looking for more of a movement shooter like Duncan that can kind of just curl off screens. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But they definitely do need to add 3-point shooting, in my personal opinion. Wes Weaver says they really need another guy who can score. Um, and I agree. I do. Like, obviously, we know right now that it's Cade, and Cade initiates so much for the Pistons. He's the head of the snake offensively. But when Cade is off, you're starting to see like who's going to step up. Like tonight, it was Duren. Duren and Stewart, I thought were the two players that stepped up the most. Duren had 18 points. Stewart had 16 points, but having another bucket getter or having another go-to scorer, I think could really help the Pistons. Marquez says this is a wake-up call. This is actually what the playoffs are going to be like. Poor half-court offense, turnovers, and bad three-point shooting must improve if the Pistons look to advance when playoffs come. I 100% agree. I mean, that's why I said this felt like a playoff type of game, the way that they were trapping Cade Cunningham in the half court. And that's something that we've talked about where that's one thing with the Pistons where they're not a very good half court team. As of right now, they rank around 19th in the NBA in half court offense. The turnovers don't help at all. Turning the ball over 17 times isn't something that you want to continue doing. I feel like every post game podcast, we're looking at the turnovers, and they're anywhere from 17, 18, sometimes up to 20 plus turnovers a game. And you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot when you're not taking care of the basketball and the 3-point shooting. Like we all know, Duncan Robinson is their best 3-point shooter in terms of volume. Obviously, you have guys like Danish Jenkins that is shooting 40% from three this season. Jaden Ivey He's shooting, I think, around 35. It might have actually gone down after the last couple of games where he's not hasn't been shooting the best from three, but adding another 3-point shooter, I think, should be huge. And I agree with Marquez. Like, if you want to advance to the playoffs, you want to get out of the first round. Like, you have to get better in the half court. You have to take better care of the basketball and get more 3-point shooting, in my personal opinion. But appreciate the comment as always, Marquez. I really do. I want to get into a couple more comments and questions with you guys. Another great comment by Sharon. Overall, the bench played better than the starters. Also, both Stu and Tobias played 25 minutes each. Stu should have played more. I agree. I felt like Stu's energy tonight. He was more active, I thought, offensively than Tobias. Tobias obviously was guarded by Kevin Durant a lot of the time. Could you attribute that to Tobias struggling? Maybe. But you're going to need a little bit more than 4 points from your starting power forward. I thought actually Stu should have closed that game. Maybe you do double bigs with Stu and Duran out there, because at least you know that you would be controlling the glass, and Stu was showing you the ability to score around the rim, bang down low, with Jabari Smith Jr. and Alperen Sengun out there. Wes Weaver also mentions Chaz should be getting some run. He's known for shooting. Yeah, that's the one thing that's, I think, frustrating. And we can kind of get to into the like this rotations and like more of like Chaz Lanier conversation. Um, I think the thing with where it's frustrating, where when the Pistons shoot so poorly from three, and you draft a guy in Chaz Lanier that is known as a 3-point shooter, and he doesn't get any clock. I think it's really frustrating, but it's easier said than done when you're a coach and you kind of have your rotation set. Like, we haven't really seen Chaz Lanier as a mainstay in this rotation, and JB has played a lot of guys. Like, I'd love to see Chaz get more clock. I really would, but he's trying to juggle Jaden Ivey. He's trying to juggle Danish Jenkins. He's trying to juggle all these guards. I don't really know where he would have played Chaz tonight. But again, like Wes, I agree with you in terms of just having a 3-point shooter. You drafted Chaz because he's a 3-point shooter. I really wish he would get a little bit more clock, in my personal opinion. But hey, that's just like a little nitpicky by me. I don't really know if you guys really feel the same way in terms of just like giving him a little bit more clock. Um, but hey, we'll see what happens at the deadline. Get into a comment by end. Can we get Schroeder again? From my understanding, the only way that we can get Dennis Schroeder, because of the CBA and it was a sign and trade with the Kings, Schroeder would have to get traded to another team, and then the Pistons could trade for Schroeder, just because it was a sign and trade where we got a trade exception, and he would have to kind of get dealt to another team, and then you could possibly trade for him again. But looks like the Kings are willing to blow it up. I mean, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, they're heading towards a rebuild. I think a lot of teams are going to be calling Sacramento over the next 2 weeks or so to kind of see, who they could get. And I'm sure Sacramento probably wants to kind of stockpile on draft picks. But we'll get into a couple more comments and questions as it does kind of relate to the trading deadline and the Pistons in this one tonight. We have a comment about Cade. It's obvious Cade is hurt. He's probably needs to sit at least 10 games, but really can't, because the Pistons probably would fall out of first place. Pistons need a legitimate second option. I want to kind of like focus on the Cade comment, because I think what you said, King Yoda, is true. Cade right now is dealing with contusions. He had a contusion on his wrist, and it was heavily taped. It wasn't taped, so maybe it's feeling a little bit better. It was on his shooting wrist. And then on the injury report tonight, he was questionable, got upgraded to probable, with another contusion on his hip. What contusions are just fancy medical terms for a bruise. So he's had bruises on his hip and bruises on his shooting wrist. So was Cade 100%? Probably not. Also had an illness in the locker room that's been spreading. But it just gets to a point where I think maybe you try to sit him in the Sacramento game. Sacramento's a team that is going through a rebuild, but they do still have a lot of veterans on their roster. I would look to try to um, rest him as much as possible. You have a West Coast trip next week where you're going out to Denver, you're going out to Phoenix, Golden State, and then you end the week with the Brooklyn Nets. So maybe you can rest him before the West Coast trip. Maybe a couple days rest could do him some good, so he is fresh for this upcoming trip next week. Um, Norman Powell be had? That's the name I'd be interested, and I believe he's an expiring. Ryan, great question, Ryan. I think if the Heat weren't kind of like a bubble playoff team right now, 100%, I think he's so important to what Miami's doing right now. And like you mentioned, he's on an expiring deal. He's looking to get paid now. I think if you're the Pistons and you're interested in Norman Powell, you're probably going to have to at least give up a first round pick. And is that really worth it if you're not considering re-signing him in the long term? Probably not. I like where your head's at, though. Norman Powell is an excellent high volume 3-point shooter. I think one of the names that I think a lot of people have mentioned and looking at the Milwaukee Bucks, depending on what happens with Giannis. I think the two names that you guys have mentioned in these post-game podcasts as well is AJ Green, who's a very good 3-point shooter, underrated player in my opinion, and Gary Trent Jr., who's also a pretty good 3-point shooter and kind of on the younger side. But I think it just really depends, like where Milwaukee's going, what they want to do. I was watching the game. Giannis left, so I don't know what happened. I don't know if he got hurt or he just decided he doesn't want to play anymore. But again, you guys, I think there are a lot of gettable 3-point shooters that Trajan and the Pistons could address at this deadline. Capella got a few rebounds right over Stu. Muscade better at the 4 and 2. Duncan tries, but either a defensive liability and a non-factor shooting. Yeah, I agree. I think the power forward position is something that this team and this organization wants to 100% upgrade in the long term because you don't really have a future power forward that can grow with this core. I think that's why there was reports of Jaren Jackson Jr. From Hoops Hype, and there's been reports of Trey Murphy. Even saw reports of Herb Jones, which we'll probably get into this weekend on the podcast. But I think the Pistons definitely want to get better at the power forward position. I don't know if it's going to be in the trade market. I don't know if it's going to be this summer during the NBA draft. I don't know if it's going to be in free agency, but I definitely think they do want to look at power forward. Michael Porter Jr. would be a perfect fit. Again, like I think there's a lot of avenues the Pistons could definitely look at power forward. Mr. Act Like It. It'll be interesting to see like what they're trying to do at the power forward position. But I do agree with you. They definitely need to upgrade it because we both know that Tobias Harris isn't going to be here for the next 5 years as your starting power forward. He may have another 2 to 3 years left at the most. But appreciate the question. We need to look at getting Clay. The price could be very cheap. That's actually a player that I saw recently mentioned by Yahoo Sports. Klay Thompson is actually kind of having a bounce back year, 3-point shooter, veteran, NBA champion. I don't hate it. Like, I think Klay Thompson, obviously the contract's a little bit bigger, but like I don't hate the name. I think he's shown the ability to hit 3-point shots throughout his career. I don't think he's as bad on defense as people have really like put him out to be. I know he has gotten a little bit older since his prime days in Golden State, but I mean, Dallas, I think where they're heading, they definitely are still kind of trying to be like somewhat competitive while still developing Cooper Flag, which I think you either have to just fully commit to a rebuild to build around Cooper Flag or try to be competitive. It'll be interesting to see. I know Rich Paul's trying to get Anthony Davis out of Dallas. They're trying to trade him before the deadline. Kyrie Irving still has not played this season. Um, I think Dallas has a lot of interesting players on their roster, from Najee Marshall to PJ Washington to Max Christie to Klay Thompson. Dallas would be a team I'd be keeping an eye on in this trading deadline because I honestly think that they want to get a little bit younger and build around Cooper Flag and kind of just have him be the face of the franchise. I heard Middleton might get a buyout. That would be a good pickup off the bench. Yeah, I mean, if he does get a buyout, I'm sure the Detroit Pistons would definitely kind of explore the options for Chris Middleton. He was a Piston for a little bit. I think where they're at, though, in terms of addressing players, is just more perimeter shooting. Middleton isn't the same player as he was in Milwaukee. He's had a lot of injuries. He's been very up and down in Washington personally. But if he does get a buyout, I would expect him to go to, contending teams like the Pistons, or maybe he goes out west to teams that need kind of a veteran presence of him coming off the bench. But don't really know if I would count Middleton in as like a big target for the Pistons. We don't have a certified bucket getter like a Kevin Durant, Booker, or even Zach when things get tough down the stretch. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we've talked about on previous podcasts as like we don't really have that number two option right now. We don't have a guy that can take over when Cade is down. We don't have a guy that can be a solidified 20 point per game scorer next to Cade. And I think that's something that Trajan and the Pistons obviously are exploring um, probably throughout the year, especially as we get closer to the deadline. They'll probably have conversations this summer to try to get Cade a number two. I just don't know who that number two option is going to possibly be. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see like what they look at. If they look at more of a short term option, a guy that's on a bigger contract but maybe has a couple years left, or maybe someone that's under contract that they have control for the next 3 to 4 years. So I think there are two different avenues Trajan in the front office can definitely take. What would you offer for Keegan Murray? I probably wouldn't offer anything, Wes, just because I don't like the contract. For Keegan Murray, if I'm going to be investing that much money into a young player like that, I much rather call New Orleans and see what they would want for a Trey Murphy the third. Personally, I really would. Nothing against Keegan Murray. I just think the Kings overpaid for him. I think they massively overpaid for Keegan Murray. I really do. I'd rather see what New Orleans wants for Trey Murphy. And I know it's probably like 3 first-round picks and a young player. But I like Trey Murphy's contract. I think he's on one of the better contracts in the NBA right now. But that's just me. But we're probably going to wrap up this podcast. We'll see you guys on Sunday because the Pistons play the Kings then. We're not going to be doing a post-game podcast. We're going to be doing a 7 o'clock podcast. We'll be joined by Sean Murphy. We're going to kind of get into the Pistons trade rumors and kind of looking at just everything around the NBA. Talk about a little bit of the halfway point with the Pistons, what we think of them, what could they use at this deadline. Should be a fun podcast as always, whenever I get together with Sean and invite him on the podcast. But appreciate you guys as always. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying warm. Looking at my computer right now, so this is 1 degree. Holy crap, man. It's cold in the D. But appreciate you guys as always. Take care. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.